Hi there, this is Rick Hansen on Amazing Greats. Thanks for joining us today. What a great interview we've got with John Strege, the author of 8 books, 2 of them New York Times bestsellers, Tiger, a biography of Tiger Woods, and 18 Holes with Bing. It's Golf, Life, and Lessons with Dad, co-authored by Bing Crosby's son, Nathaniel. Another book, When War Played Through, Golf During World War II, won the United States Golf Association's Herbert Warren Wind Book Award in 2005. John worked for the Los Angeles Times and the Orange County Register before joining Golf Digest in 1997. He's a lifetime honorary member of the Baseball Writers Association of America and is a member of the Golf Writers Association of America and the author of a new book, which we're going to talk about today. It's called In the Big Inning, in the beginning, get it? Where Faith Meets Sport, a Christian sports writer's perspective. Welcome to this version of Amazing Greats. We have as our special guest on Amazing Greats today, it is John Strege, a legendary sports writer for over 40 years and has followed Jesus for that long and then some. And he's got a lot of baseball in his background, a lot of golf in his background. He has intertwined all of that in his personal life with his Christian journey, and there's so much to unpack. It is fascinating to talk to this man who's seen so many, been with so many. And let's start with, first of all, you played recreational golf with Tiger Woods and his dad many times. You've played golf with Kevin Costner, Diana Shore, Bobby Hatfield from the Righteous Brothers. You played tennis with Arthur Ashe, had an encounter with Muhammad Ali in a storage room behind a department store. And you've had an interesting relationship with Tommy Lasorda. And I want to ask about that. You know, Joey Bishop, new Joey Bishop. We're friends with Vin Scully. Your life is just, what a storybook.
Correct.
Good grief, John.
Well, I've been blessed. I mean, there's nothing else I could have done for a living. I figured that out a long time ago, and I love writing and I love sports. So I was able to make a career out of it. But I couldn't fix anything. I couldn't sell anything. So I think the good Lord was looking out for me.
Was that intimidating, at least at first, to be surrounded by the best and the best?
Yeah, I got into it in high school just, for the local newspaper. So I started early and then went to the LA Times when I was in college. Right when I started college, I started at the LA Times, just doing all the grunt work and, writing prep roundups and stuff. So I was around it, and you do get comfortable with it. It was a little daunting at first because when I got hired they didn't have a full-time position for me at the LA Times. So when I got hired by the Orange County Register, immediately put me on the Dodgers beat. And so that was a little intimidating at first, but you get used to it pretty quickly.
Yeah. So just to jump in at the Muhammad Ali story, I don't think has been told, and it's such an odd little thing that I think I read it in Golf Digest in your retirement piece, and it talked about him levitating.
Yeah.
What brought that on, and how did that go?
Well, I was writing columns for the Orange County Register, and Ali was promoting a new line of cologne. And so he was appearing at a mall in San Diego and then was coming up to Orange County the next day. And I thought, I'll go down and see him write a column to promote his appearance in Orange County, and waited until he took a break, and his people invited me back to it was a storage room, just to give him a 15-minute break. And he decided to levitate for me. I mean, it's a slate of foot, as I call it. He's actually standing on one foot, but the way he does it, it looks like he's raising himself and a couple of inches in the air. He was always a showman. I mean, always.
You had a special relationship with Vin Scully. He's the legendary, maybe the most renowned baseball play-by-play guy in history. So tell us about Vin Scully.
Well, I did 3 years full-time on covering the Dodgers. So you're traveling with them. Back in those days, we actually traveled on the Dodger plane. So you get to know everybody. And this was just a world-class Christian man. I can't speak highly enough about him. I mean, I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about him. just a wonderful person. And so,
Wow.
and then I would still cover some games, not when I wasn't on the beat full time. And so I remember, I think it was 2015, maybe. I don't remember the exact year, but my daughter wanted to go to a baseball game. By then she was 15 years old or something. And I said, I'll get us tickets to the Dodgers game. And then I've got a lifetime Baseball Writers Association pass, so I can get into the press box anywhere. So I decided I better go up and say hi to Scully one last time. So I visited with him a few minutes between innings in his booth. So
Wow.
the guy was just the best.
And then a golf with Dinah Shore and Kevin Costner, and you must be a pretty good golfer. Tell me about your golf game.
It's almost non-existent now. I could play fairly well back, and by fairly well, I mean maybe an 8 handicap at the best. But I started covering golf in 1985, and so you're invited to pro-ams and things like that. Um, and you're going to great spots. Palm Springs. You go in
Yeah.
Pebble Beach, and often try to get around a golf in before you go to work at the PJ Tour events. So it was fun.
What a gig. What a gig.
Yes.
Man, oh man. Well, one of the books that you wrote was the biography of Woods, and you told the story from, I mean, you've known the guy since he was like 14 years old, right?
Right.
He and the whole family. How is it that you connected with him at that early age?
So I'd started covering golf in 1985. I was aware of him in 1985. He was probably 9, 10 years old at that point. So you're not writing about him. But when he was about 14, he was dominating junior golf in Southern California. It was obvious he was going to be a pretty good player. And so I started introducing myself to the family. 14-year-olds don't have much to say. So I started working mom and dad a little bit to try to, get more information out. And I ended up having a friendship with both of them. They had my wife and I over for dinner once, and but I'd go see Tiger. Once he started playing in the National, started winning U.S. Junior Amateur, won 3 in a row, and U.S. Amateur 3 in a row. I'd go over to the house and in advance of his playing in the Masters or the U.S. Open or another U.S. Amateur, just to interview him a little bit and get quotes on how his game's going and what he's looking forward to. And so that's sort of how it came about. And then in 1996, he wins his 3rd U.S. Amateur in a row. He's the biggest story in golf, and he's just turning pro. I get a call from a New York literary agent, Freya Manston. She had called the New York Times writer to say, hey, are you interested in doing a Tiger book? And the Times writer, Larry Dorman, was one of my best friends to this day, says, no, I'm not the guy to do it. I don't have enough information or time, but here's the guy you should do it. And so she called me, and we put together a proposal pretty quickly, and the book came out in like 10 days after Tiger won the Masters by 12 shots in 1997. Timing was perfect. And again, I think the good Lord was looking out for me.
No kidding. That is an incredible story. And so you're out in the golf course with Tiger Woods, and you're playing golf with him, recreational golf. Is he giving you tips? Any golf tips?
I didn't even ask him for. It was one time, I played several times with his father, so I asked Earl, his dad. Tiger was coming home for Christmas vacation for his sophomore year at Stanford, and I wanted to get around in with him before he turned pro, and then I'd never have a chance to play golf with him again. And so I set it up, and it was delightful. 18-hole round, just a lot of fun.
Was he intense, or was he out there just
Yeah,
having a good time?
What surprised me, he hadn't touched a golf club in 2 weeks because of finals at Stanford. And he'd get out there just playing with choppers like myself, and yet if he hit a bad shot, he'd get angry.
Really?
I'm going, we're just out here trying to have fun. But I mean, he took everything about golf serious. I mean, we talked walking down the fairways, but when it was time to hit a shot, if he didn't hit it the way he wanted to, he was angry.
Wow. So you're a solid Christian, have been for the long time. Tiger was actually raised a Buddhist. Was there
Correct.
any a topic of conversation about religion with him ever?
I never did. I might have talked to his dad about it. I think his dad was raised a Baptist, but I don't think he was a practicing Baptist, at least at that stage. So, no, I did not have an opportunity to talk to him about it.
So your Christian start was early. You were born into a Christian family.
Yes.
What? Tell us a little about the origins of your Christian story.
Well, I was born up in your neck of the woods. I was born in Everett, Washington.
Oh,
My dad came from a German family where everybody was Lutheran. Um, and so I was baptized, a month after birth in it would have been April of 1952 at Emmanuel Lutheran in Everett. Um, when my dad got transferred a lot, so I wound up moving him kind of around the country. But my parents always sacrificed to send myself and my two brothers to Lutheran schools from kindergarten through eighth grade. So I mean that was the foundation, and they probably would have sent us to a Christian high school, except we were in Whittier, California at that time, and there was not one close enough to send us. But
yeah.
I owe it all to my parents. It starts with them setting the example.
With a lot of people, it starts out with that being the foundation, and especially in yours, it's a very solid foundation. But was there a time at some point along the way that their religion became your religion, where you really felt a connection with Jesus?
Well, yeah, almost from the outset. But then, I have to admit that there was a period. Now, I'm 18 and I'm on my own going to college. Wasn't going to church every Sunday. And then, even starting my career, I would still go to church, but not every Sunday. It kind of had fallen off, which, I'm ashamed to say. I wish it hadn't, but that's okay. But I ended up marrying a wonderful Christian woman, and that brought me right back into it. And we've had a great relationship with a bunch of pastors over the years. And, we go to church every Sunday and every Wednesday during Lent. So
a tough thing to do as a sports writer because so many sports actually consume your Sundays.
yes,
But you found a way to make it to church.
yeah. I mean, again, once I got married again, I've only been married once, but once we got married, um, unless I was out of town covering something on Sundays, which happened quite often, but yeah, every Sunday. And God bless my wife, and our daughter goes to church every Sunday, and with us. So all is good.
Such an amazing career. Were there times along the journey that you really felt that you were divinely inspired to make a decision or to move in a certain way? Did God speak to you along the way?
Well, I'm probably jumping ahead in the interview, but when we had our daughter, it's a long story. But I don't know if you want the whole story, but we were having trouble conceiving, and turns out my wife had premature ovarian failure, and she was devastated, as I was, and she blurted out to the doctor, "Do you have frozen embryos that we can adopt?" So our daughter became the first adopted frozen embryo in the world. But to get to that point, we wanted to make sure everything was right with God. So we consulted leaders in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, a couple of pastors we knew. One of them was the founder of Concordia University, Irvine, was one of our friends, and Dr. James Dobson. And so we did our research, and they all came back, yes, if the families with these frozen embryos are not going back to get them, they should be adopted because life begins at conception. So, I started collecting I had a lot of pastor friends anyway, but I've got so many now just through that. So
Yeah.
it's been good.
And to reemphasize, you were the first to do an adoption of a frozen embryo.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that was your trailblazers in that regard. Hannah was born 9 months later, I'm assuming, or somewhere around there.
It took a while. Again, we had to do our research, and then we had this great Christian man who ran Nightlife Christian Adoptions that we had known 15, 20 years earlier. And, asked him, he was running a Christian adoption agency. What about adopting frozen embryos? And he didn't hesitate. He says, yeah, we got to do that because otherwise, they're not going to have a chance. And he took the ball and ran with it. But it took a couple of years before we got to the point. Then we had to find somebody that was willing to surrender their embryos to us.
Yeah.
And that's where Focus on the Family really came in. So to help.
And Hannah now is how old?
She's 25. She went to Biola University in Southern California. And I don't know if you're familiar with that Christian university. Biola is actually an acronym, Bible Institute of Los Angeles. Great Christian university. And then got her master's in social work from Baylor. Just graduated last fall. Just passed her licensing in Colorado and Texas, looking for a job now. And I believe she's at a job interview right now. So,
wow, what a story. I mean, all of these other stories, your life is like a crazy, crazy book. In fact, you've written, what, 7 books, something like that?
8 books now. Yeah.
8 books. And so a little piece of your life is revealed in each one of those. And one is dedicated to the story of Hannah, correct?
Yes. And the reason I did that one, we had file cabinets full of information and newspaper clippings and research on it, frozen embryos and all this. And I wanted to put it in a form for Hannah so she knew her entire story from how this unfolded. But in so doing that, Nightlight Christian Adoptions, who we used to adopt the frozen embryos, they started, when people signed up and they were interested in adopting frozen embryos, they had a choice of 1 or 2 books to read as part of their, counseling. And one of them was my book. So I think it's helped, I pray that it's helped a lot of couples understand how this unfolded.
Is adopting frozen embryos today fairly normal?
There's a couple agencies around the country that are doing it. And the problem is it's these infertility doctors. They're, couples go to them, and I know we're getting off the sports track here, but
That's all right.
At any rate, they
all
go.
Right. This is just as fascinating as your sports career, for sure.
They want to have a baby like we did. And so these infertility doctors are creating as many embryos as they can. Well, an embryo, this is how we all began. So they're creating life. And then the couple completes their family and they got leftover embryos. And there's, some estimates over 1 million frozen embryos out there.
Wow.
And so we're trying to solve a problem, but the infertility doctors are, not helping.
Yeah. So there are so many Christian stories in your book, and I'm sure we're going to get to a couple of them at least. But in today's world, who stands out as the most influential Christian athlete that's playing today?
That's still playing. My first thought was Tim Tebow, but he's no
we'll
longer
talk about
playing.
Tim for sure.
Yeah, but he's certainly influential. It varies by sports. Like Scotty Scheffler, #1 ranked golfer in the world, is great at just naturally, mentioning, his faith, not forcing it on anybody, just very comfortable doing it. I'm trying to think. Several people in football. I mean, Russell Wilson has been a strong Christian. Steph Curry. they occasionally make mistakes in the basketball court and get criticized. You're supposed to be a Christian, but we're all sinners. So, you know, you got to cut them some slack. But, I love these athletes that are willing to speak out. And as I wrote in the book you're talking about, it's called In the Big Inning, where faith meets sports, Christian sports writer's perspective. I try to really emphasize that in this day and age, there's so many opportunities via social media for Christian athletes to witness in a soundbite. I mean, it could be 6 seconds, just thanking your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and then moving on to the interview or tweeting. So I think it's very important. But there are a lot of them out there. C.J. Stroud, the Houston Oilers quarterback, is just one of the all-time strong Christians.
Brock Purdy,
Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
A couple of the ones that are, on the front page of the sports section these last few weeks for sure, because they were both involved in the biggest game of the year.
Yep.
So that, it's interesting to me because we do basically Amazing Greats talks to musicians, actors, athletes, authors, businessmen. And it seems to me, and I want to get your perspective on this, it seems to me like the most outspoken of those various careers are the athletes. They don't feel any hesitation in sharing their beliefs. Is there a reason you think that that's the case?
I do, because I think they see other athletes comfortably doing it, before they decided to do it, and they realize that, we're all called to spread the word. And but again, I think it started with probably people like Tebow, who was totally unafraid of expressing his love for the Savior, and so many others followed suit, and they go, yeah, this is what we're called to do. Go out and make disciples of all nations.
Tim Tebow is kind of a trailblazer in that regard. What would you say?
I would say, yeah. Phenomenal. I mean, to this day, the night to shine. I think you mentioned that to me in an email. It's one of the great, just such a beautiful profession of love and for the Lord, and acknowledging these kids, these special needs kids. These are people who need to be saved too.
Yeah. Well, I got involved about 5 years ago with the one that the Night to Shine here in our area. And I was a former radio DJ and have a company that does mobile DJ entertainment. So when I was first approached about the idea, and I wasn't approached, I actually saw Tim Tebow explaining what it was, seeing videos of what it was, and it was just amazing to me. But I had no idea how intricate it is. I mean, Tim Tebow's foundation sent me a 94-page manual on how to run Night to Shine, right? So, and we have 27 volunteers that are leaders and 430 volunteers altogether. So it's a huge deal. And now Tim is also doing a wonderful thing with fighting sex trafficking.
Yes.
That's his new mission, his new initiative. And he is making big waves there as well. So, but you go back to, so do you know Tim? Interacted with him?
Okay. I've never interacted with him, but, I've defended him a lot because, like when the Tebowing thing started, and because he would kneel, after a game. Well, he was doing that in high school when there was nobody there. I mean, he wasn't doing this for show. I mean, it was an authentic saying a quick prayer. And so he's been one of my favorite athletes, since he started playing college football.
Yeah. Who else did you touch on in the book, just so that we can give a flavor for that to our audience here?
There's several baseball stories in there. I think you'd mentioned Tommy Lasorda. I'd like to think he's in heaven now, and I mentioned that in there because he did go to. I didn't get along with him at all. I acknowledge he didn't like me. I didn't like him, but he always went to. He was raised a Catholic, went to a Catholic grade school, And I think he tried to go to mass every Sunday, whether they're on the road or not. So I'd like to think, someday I'll see him in heaven. I talked to Bobby Richardson, the Yankee second baseman from those great 50s and 60s Yankee dynasty teams. Devout Christian. His friend, this was, I talked to him recently for the book, but the story goes back to when had been working on Mickey Mantle, trying to get him to go to church and convert him. And I'll never forget this line he said, and he said it before, but I asked him, why'd you work so hard? And he eventually brought Mantle around to faith at the end of Mantle's career or life. And Richardson said, I want to spend eternity in heaven with my friend. That's why I spent so much time working on him. I'm going, how good is that?
Yeah, I had an occasion to meet Bobby Richardson after he'd written a book. I
Yeah.
just happened to be in Charlotte and went to the Billy Graham Museum or his library, and Bobby Richardson was there, promoting his book. And what a gentleman, and what a wonderful Christian human being for sure.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. You share some stories in the book, lots of them. And I would highly encourage anybody, even if you're not a Christian, even if you're not a sports fanatic, this book is just a great testimony to goodness and to, the miracles that God is involved with on a day-to-day basis in the real lives of real sports stars. So it's really a great book. But I wanted to know, is there a story that didn't make the cut? Is there a story about a Christian athlete that you wanted to tell, but there wasn't room, or you didn't have enough info, or something like that?
I'm glad you asked that question. I thought about Chris Mortensen. We had talked about him previously off the air, the ESPN NFL legend. Really world-class guy and great communicator. Well, I've known him for almost 50 years, and he was not a Christian back then. But I first met him. I was covering preps for the LA Times. He was covering preps for the South Bay Daily Breeze. We were both the same age, single. We moved on to covering the Dodgers for competing newspapers, and he became one of my best friends, and he was up until his death the other day. I thought about including him in there, but then I'm going, because I finished the book last fall. I'd been in touch with him all the time, and he had the cancer, throat cancer. I wasn't sure he was doing well, and I didn't want to, put any more pressure on him. So I excluded that story. But he married a wonderful Christian woman who started taking him to church. This is when he was at the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, and he'd just go along. He wasn't too interested, but it was that Sunday after Sunday, and she would play. They had an intercom system throughout their house in Atlanta. And she played Dr. Dobson's radio show, David Jeremiah's radio show. It was always going on, and it planted a seed. And one day in church, they do the altar call where anybody wants to come up. And as he's told the story a couple times, he felt almost like somebody pushed him up. He just got out of his seat and went up, and he did that, and then he got not a standing ovation. He got an ovation from the crowd in church because his wife had gotten a prayer group that was praying for more, every week to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. And I'm going, I love that story.
Oh, that is a great story. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you will see him in
Yes.
eternity for sure. So,
Yeah.
although the loss now is,
It hurts.
it hurts
Yeah.
a lot for sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you were a sports writer, a Christian sports writer, and didn't unashamedly were a Christian sports writer, but you wrote for secular papers and secular circulations. Was there ever a conflict between your Christianity and your employer?
No, I don't think so. It was When we had going back to Hanna now, started working at Golf Digest in 1997. Hanna came along in 98, and then we got involved in the whole embryonic stem cell research. It was a big controversy.
Yeah.
We were owned, that Golf Digest was owned by the New York Times at that time. And so my wife was going to testify in Congress. I think this was 2002, against using these embryos for research, because if you use them for research, it destroys the embryo and it's destroying life. And it was a controversial thing. But I didn't tell Golf Digest I was going back. I just asked for a couple of days off. And I thought this would fly under the radar. My wife testifies. Didn't fly under the radar. I mean, it was page one on every newspaper. The New York Times, and again, we were owned by the New York Times at the time. There was a picture of me holding Hanna, sitting behind my wife, Marlene, as she was testifying. So, and nobody, and I thought, am I going to get some grief? Nobody said anything. And I just, I applaud them for it. They might have been talking about me behind my back. I don't know, but these people were great to me. So no issues.
We mentioned briefly the whole social media kind of change that occurred during your career. I mean, when you started out, it was all about the written word. It was all about, these newspapers had circulations that were incredible. And then things changed along the way as social media became a thing. So how do you view social media today?
Well, it can be a source. First of all, I've referred to Twitter, now called X, as a sewer. I mean, there's so much bad stuff, but it can be used for good stuff too. So, you try your best to counter all the bad stuff. And then there's a lot of Christian athletes that do so and do so very well. But I wish it wasn't a sewer, but it can be awful at times.
Yeah. Well, it's a double-edged sword because, like you say, it's if you focus on the negative, there's plenty of it there. But as you said in your book, social media also kind of set the athletes free to share their faith
Right.
with their fans. And a lot of times, secular TV, secular radio will exclude those comments about their faith, whereas in social media they don't have an opportunity to.
Right. Or the live TV interview. But who was it recently? It was an NBC interview where the athlete, I can't remember who it was, a football player, but mentioned Jesus Christ at the start of when it was on live TV, the post-round interview. And then NBC put it on Twitter, but they cut out the Christian part. It's just so typical. It's it's again, I love these athletes, and I can't remember the quarterback from Alabama who's a strong Christian, won the Heisman Trophy, and at the Heisman Trophy ceremony, first words out of his mouth, thanking the Lord Jesus Christ. And it was live television, and it took about 5 seconds. I don't think anybody was offended, but it was a great opportunity to witness.
Yeah. That is so great. So are you actively doing anything? What keeps you busy these days?
I still help out Golf Digest when they need it, and they probably need it more than I care to do it in retirement, but it keeps my hand in it. So oftentimes it'll be doing some editing on Friday or Saturday of whatever golf tournaments are being played. But I appreciate the opportunity to continue to, that they think enough of me that they allow me to continue to help out and occasionally write some stories. So,
besides Scotty Scheffler, is there other golfers that you can recall who have a strong Christian belief and are upfront about it?
Yeah, there's quite a few of them. One of the people I'm most impressed with is this LPGA rookie, Rose Zhang, who won. She might have been the most heralded amateur woman player ever, devoutly Christian and unafraid to talk about it or mention it. And great golf swing. She's going to be a superstar. Just turned pro last summer. On the PGA Tour, they do have a Bible study every week.
Do they?
I think it's like Tuesday night, probably Tuesday night. And they get a good group of people that attend it.
How about the Bible studies in the locker rooms at baseball? Dodgers,
Yeah.
Do they have a full-time chaplain? How does the behind the scenes
Well, I
work?
wouldn't say full-time, but they do have, it's called baseball chapel. Every baseball minor league and major league team probably has a baseball chapel where, because, they're working on Sundays, they might have a local pastor come in and do a Bible study. And there's a lot of players that attend it too.
Were you ever included in those sessions or not really?
I probably would have been invited, but I never did.
Yeah.
Sorry to say, as I mentioned earlier, I fell away from going to church every Sunday for a while.
Yeah.
Again, not proud of that, but never lost my faith, though. Never lost my faith.
And you're going, you have a church that you like there in Colorado?
We do. In fact, I'm going to be speaking in about 2 weeks on a Saturday to the men's group about the book and my career. So really good people. Colorado Springs area it's still a lot of Christians.
Good.
It's
Yeah.
still conservative military town.
Well, how about more books for you? Do you have anything in
I'd
mind?
love to. I keep thinking, trying to think of an idea. Because when I was doing all those other books, not the latest one in the beginning, but the other books, I was working a full-time job while I was writing the books. And I thought, man, I'd like to write a book where I'm not working a full-time job and can just do the book. So
Yeah.
if I can come up with an idea, I will continue to do it.
Well, God will put that on your heart here as time goes on. I'm sure He's probably giving you a break right now.
Probably, yes. Yeah.
So you've been officially retired since when?
Summer of 2020.
Okay.
I'm 71 now, but I wanted to make sure I got out on my own terms because, as you mentioned earlier, publications, started laying people off right and left, and I really wanted to get out on my own terms, and we're in a position that I could retire. So, and I asked, if you got any work for me just to kind of keep my hand in it, and they said absolutely. So
wonderful.
I continue to do that.
Is there a scripture verse that you kind of cling to for your life and journey?
John 3:16, obviously, would be one of them. The other one would be, and it goes back to our daughter, Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. That just perfectly describes, an embryo. And so, and my wife is really good at speaking to people, doing radio shows, promoting that. Not just embryo adoption, but the fact is that these are human beings. They need a chance. So I applaud her for it.
Well, thank you so much for your time. The book is like I say, such an easy, fluid read that it happens so quickly. I finished the book in a day, and it was entertaining. It was inspirational, and you have a gift for using words. You're a great storyteller.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm more comfortable writing the words than speaking them. I'm not necessarily great on television or anything, but I've loved the written word forever. So
yeah,
I appreciate the comment.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for being with us. And to Marlene and to Hanna, give them our best, and God bless you and them. Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it, John.
I enjoyed talking with you. And thank you for all the work you do.
Whoa, if that is not an amazing story, I don't know what is. A Christian sports writer in a secular world who shares his high-profile career hobnobbing with the best athletes in the world and embraces his faith through it all. John Strege. I get linked up with him and his new book called The Big Inning, and share this podcast with a friend. Give us a review if you will, and join us again next time on Amazing Greats. God bless.